Today we're going to do some problem-solving problems with fractions and comparing them. Your first problem, let's read. The deepest part of the Grand Canyon is about 1 1/6 miles deep. The deepest part of the ocean is located in the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean. The deepest part of the ocean is almost 6 times as deep as the deepest part of the Grand Canyon. About how deep is the deepest part of the ocean? So lots of information given to you there. Your question, however, is about how deep is the deepest part of the ocean? So let's look at the first number it gave you. What is the 1 1/6 miles? So deepest part of the Grand Canyon, definitely something we need. Who can tell me what the 6 times is for? What is it telling us about 6 times, Mackenzie? Well, it's going to be 6 times as deep as the deepest part of the Grand Canyon. So it is going to show us the Pacific Ocean. So we know how deep the Grand Canyon is. We're trying to find out how deep the ocean is, or the deepest part of the ocean. So it only tells us that it is 6 times what the Grand Canyon's deepest part is. So now that we have things highlighted and circled, let's figure out what we need to write. If you remember, it's going to have everything written for us on the first page. And what do you have to do on the second? So make sure that you're following along carefully with what it is putting in here so that we can do it when we get to the next page. What is it that I am needing to find? Starts out with, I need to find. Maurice, what are we looking for? Okay, so we need to know about how deep the deepest part of the ocean is. So, about how deep the deepest part of the ocean is. So basically we're just restating the question again. We need to know about how deep the deepest part of the ocean is. Now the information that we circled is going to go in the next box. What information do I need to use? So they wrote, the deepest part of the Grand Canyon is about how many miles deep? 1 1/6. So again, basically what they did was took this sentence right here, correct? And moved it down here. The next one says the deepest part of the ocean is about how many times is deep? 6. So right here they're taking same thing right out of your problem. Right? Now, what did they draw for you this time to use your information in? What do we call that? Aiden? Well, it could be used as a bar model, but they call it a diagram. So it says, how will I use the information? I can draw a diagram. The reason they call it a diagram because maybe it won't all look exactly like that. I will tell you, you will be writing and drawing these on your homework page as well as on the other pages of this packet. So please make sure you understand where you're getting your information and how to draw the diagram. Okay? So, it is a bar model. Diagram is a bigger word for that because it may not always look the same. Does that make sense? Okay. So here you're going to draw part of your bar model. They've already done the hard part for you. But as you can see, do they have anything on this side? No. So we're going to have to know where they got their information, how many boxes they're drawing, and all of that for the next time. So we're going to compare the depth of the deepest part of the Grand Canyon and the deepest part of the ocean in miles, because what was it labeled in? Miles to begin with. So, what is the 1 1/6? The Grand Canyon. So that's what we're going to write here. Okay. So that makes this next model what? The ocean. So we're going to go ahead and put those here before we put anything in the model. Now, if we remember back to the information we needed, the deepest part of the Grand Canyon is about 1 1/6. Do you see where that's at? And then it says the deepest part of the ocean is about 6 times that. How many boxes do I have? 6. For a reason, because it says 6 times. What am I going to put in those boxes, Morgan? 1 1/6 in each one, because I'm going to take it that many times. Now that I have the model filled in, we're going to write an equation to solve. We're going to use M as the deepest part of what in miles? Look at this where they're putting M. They're saying that this is going to be M, so it's going to be the deepest part of what? The ocean. So M is going to stand for the deepest part of the ocean in miles. So how many times are we doing that? 6. And we're going to do what kind of equation? Multiplying, and we're going to multiply it by? So 1 1/6 from the Grand Canyon. All right. So bring down the 6 and the multiplying. We're going to write this mixed number as a fraction. What do I write this as? Cheyenne. 7/6. So when I do the multiplication times 6 times 7/6, I'm going to get a grand total of, get it in? No, I'm taking 6 times 7, and then I'm going to put it over my denominator. So what do I get? I'm multiplying it to put it in a fraction first before I can take it back and put it in a whole number. 42/6. So that's what it's looking for here. Then I can change it back to the mixed number, and I get what as a total? 7. Is there any extra or fraction? No, because it divided evenly. So the deepest part of the ocean is about how many miles deep? 7. So I want you to think about that. Deepest part of the Grand Canyon is 1 1/6 miles. Deepest part of the ocean is 7 miles. So if you've ever seen the Grand Canyon, you know how deep it actually looks. Think about that being 7 miles for the ocean if you were actually going to be able to see it under all the water. Questions about what we did? I want you to make sure you know how to do all of these steps here, because that's what you're going to have to do. You're also going to have to do this, because when you turn the page, there's nothing. All right? Think you can do it?
Yes.
Let's find out. All right, your second problem. It says mountains are often measured by the distance they rise above sea level. Mount Washington rises more than 1 1/10 miles above sea level. Mount Everest rises about 5 times as high. About how many miles above sea level does Mount Everest rise? Read the question with me while we highlight.
How many miles above sea level does Mount Everest rise?
All right. Brandon, can you tell me what the 1 1/10 miles stands for, please? Okay, so 1 1/10 miles is how much Mount Washington is above sea level. What does the 5 times stand for, Chase?
As high?
But as high as what? What is 5 times as high?
As Mount.
So think about what he told you. Mount Washington is 1 1/10 miles above sea level.
Mount Everest is 5 times.
So that means that Mount Everest is going to be higher than Mount Washington, correct? By how many times? 5. Okay? So there are your things to circle. What is it I need to find? This time we have to write out the whole sentence. So it doesn't give us parts to fill in. Elena, what are we finding? Okay, so I need, you know what, I think I'm going to type this. I think it's going to be faster. So, I need to find about how many miles above sea level Mount Everest rises. Almost exactly the same thing that you have as the question. I'll let you use the MT period for Mount if you haven't already written it. So I need to find about how many miles above sea level Mount Everest rises. And then look back over to find out what information we need to use. What's the first thing that it tells us? Fred, what does it tell us first? What's some information it gives us? For what? Okay, but what mountain are we discussing? That's probably going to be important to us. No. Go back and read where your 1 1/10 is at, please. Okay, so we know that Mount Washington rises about 1 1/10 miles. That's the first thing we know. What's the second thing we know? So Mount Everest rises about 5 times as high. Bless you. And then what are we going to do to use our information? Ian, what are we going to use here to help solve the problem? Heights of what? But what are they called? Can we just say mountains so we don't have to give the names of them? So I can draw a diagram to compare the heights of the mountains. Notice how I went to the other side of the page to find what they had said, and then he changed it to where it works for us. So I can draw a diagram to compare the heights of the mountains. They were comparing depths on the other page. So now we're going to do that. We're going to draw a diagram so that we can see the comparison between Mount Washington and Mount Everest. So if you notice on the other page, they have their labels and then they drew their model, correct? So what's the first mountain?
Mount Washington.
So I'm going to just write Washington. And the other one is Everest. So, what kind of box am I going to draw for Mount Washington? Bailey, what's going to be there for Washington? So, one box with 1 1/10. So, what's going to be there for Mount Everest, Cheyenne?
5.
Okay, so 5 boxes. And what's going to be in those 5 boxes? Good. 1 in 1/10.